The big story at this hour, less than a week after the Enforcement Directorate questioned Congress Chief Sonia Gandhi in an alleged money laundering case connected to the National Herald newspaper, the Enforcement Directorate is now raiding around 12 locations, including the offices of the newspaper in Delhi and several other premises linked to the Associate Journals Limited in this case. Sources say that the probe agency is likely to attach these properties after the searches, and this comes days after Sonia Gandhi, the Congress president, was questioned in the National Herald case for 3 days and for close to 12 hours. Now, the raids are currently underway at close to 12 locations, as we mentioned, and one including the premises of the office of the National Herald office and several other premises that are linked to the Associate Journals Limited in this case. And the Enforcement Directorate is likely to attach these properties after the searches. And what we also know is that the usual process of the Enforcement Directorate is to first conduct raids and then go on for questioning. But in this case, that order seems to be reversed, as the questioning was first conducted for both Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi, and now is when we are seeing the raids taking place. Now, to get more details and get more reactions on this big story, we have guests joining us on the discussion. Aishwarya Mahadev, who is a spokesperson of the Congress, and PKD Nambiar, who is a political analyst and who also supports the BJP. Let me start with you, Aishwarya Mahadev. The Congress is saying that we won't bow down after these searches that are being conducted at the National Herald House.
You know, first and foremost, let's make it very clear that the Congress party and the leadership, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi ji, have made it very clear and stated that they have nothing to hide. The lawyers have said the same, that the entire transaction is out in the domain. The ED and any other authority that wants to look at it can do it. Prima facie, there is no case whatsoever. However, this is a larger political conspiracy and ploy because of what's been happening in Parliament. Whether it's the questioning of Rahul Gandhi ji or Madam Gandhi is secondary, but what is happening in Parliament, where the BJP has no responses, the BJP is cornered and on a back foot, and you see that this is a response to it. But you know, one single question I will ask, whether there's any wrongdoing, it can be unearthed, and you know, as long as it's a free and fair investigation, you will know that the Congress has absolutely nothing to hide. But the second thing is, you know, you have all these raids on opposition leaders across the country. Why is it that in the span of how many ever years you've been in power, though you claimed, you know, you would make it a corruption-free India, why is it that your own members who have been indicted in so many cases, there is prima facie evidence of massive mismanagement and corruption, whether it's Himanta Biswa Sharma, Yediyurappa, the Bellari brothers, Narayan Rane, you know, Suvendu Adhikari, Mukul Roy when he was there. Why is it that not once have you used or asked, or whether the ED or the IT or any of these constitutional authorities have not gone after them for suspected foul play or any sort of mismanagement?
Let me in fact take that question to Mr. PKD Nambiar. You heard the Congress's side that why is no similar action taken against leaders of the BJP? They also face these cases, as she mentioned, Himanta Biswa Sharma and other leaders.
This is very unfortunate. Whenever we talk about any kind of an ED raids or an action on the corrupt people or on the real tip-off, if the agencies which are supposed to be acting on it, if they act, the Congress have only got one, or predominantly the oppositions have only one question, that is it, why it is not BJP is not been raided? Why the BJP leaders have been left out? May I ask humbly, with a very, very basic common sense, in this country, let's assume for a minute, just assume for a minute that even if these are political vendetta, is these courts in these countries are all shut? Why not even a single time a Congress or an opposition party has not gone to the court putting up a complaint that this is what is happening? Why there is no, because there is nothing. And you just wanted to go on a blanket case, because she was just mentioning about both in the case of Yediyurappa and Himanta Biswa Sharma, both have been already, the courts have already taken a decision. They have already been given a clean sheet. I think just go back and read it once again before you just take the name one for the, just for the heck of adding more and more that the entire BJP is bad. I think if Congress, or for that matter an opposition, is having even a 1% of a feeling there is something which is not really happening right, they have all the right to go to the courts in this country. And if they believe that it is not, the courts in these countries are not run by BJP. One. Number two is that whenever there is a, see, the raid is happening on National Herald. It's an inquiry which has been taking from the last almost 10 years or plus. It's an ongoing inquiry. If the agencies feel that there is something which they wanted to really get hold of those real information, wherein they feel there is something wrong has been done, then I think let the agencies function openly. And if the Congress feels they have not done anything wrong, then they should be silently going for it rather than making it as a political statement.
Right.
If they have not
Nambiar,
done anything wrong, why
I think the
are they
larger
worried?
question again comes back to how there are so many of these raids and searches that are conducted, but of course the conviction in these cases remains very low, and there's nothing that these cases finally end up in, and that's one of the reasons why the opposition alleges that this is mere political targeting. But let me take your question to the Congress. You heard Mr. Nambiar saying that if the Congress does not have anything to hide, then why do they have anything against these searches and these questioning?
You know, Priyanshi, first and foremost, Mr. Nambiar needs to understand what the process is, that when a matter is sub judice between the ED and it's something that's being decided, you cannot take it and try to ask for any sort of process in the court per se, one. And the second, our lawyers have clarified that we will wait for the ED to do what they have to, and then we will adopt any legal recourse if we believe we've been unfairly targeted, right? Second, you know, he talks about, oh, Mr. Yediyurappa has been cleared and whatnot. You know, Mr. Yediyurappa was cleared when the BJP was in power, and the former Lokayukta who created that report of what had happened in the Bellary mining scam, and he took a bribe through a check, and the court gave him a clean chit. And you know, not to cast aspersions on the court, but when a court can completely declare somebody who has publicly said they own an establishment, when the court recently said, oh no, the person does not own that per se institution in Goa, you realize that the courts also, and every single institution in this country today, do not have any free hand or reign. And very simply, sir, if you want to mount a witch hunt, go right ahead. The opposition is not going to stop in their fight for justice, the fight against price rise, the fight against GST, the fight against inflation, the fight against the intolerance in society today. And the BJP has no other agenda. You saw the rubbish that happened in Parliament. You saw the manner in which those MPs behaved. And very singularly, yes, we will let the ED function in whatever manner possible. But when in front of your face, you see BJP leaders or BJP's allies known and caught, what happened to that man who was running, a sex trafficking ring, in the Northeast? What happened to the ammunition that was found there? What happened to your answer to that? Your BJP vice president of an entire state was caught with minor children and had ammunition. What is the response to that? Please do not act like the government does not turn a blind eye to their own faults. They do. And they ensure that the authorities do not go after them. And that is the reality, Priyanshi, in India today.
Right. Mr. Nambiar, your response to that, that is the case that we recently heard of in the Northeast, a BJP vice president accused of trafficking. What's your response to the attention that these cases get against the attention that cases against the Congress? And we also saw Sanjay Raut being targeted in Maharashtra. In Jammu and Kashmir, it was Mr. Farooq Abdullah, and the list goes on. So what's your response to the specific targeting that the opposition is alleging?
Priyanshi, firstly, that Aishwarya has made two mistakes. One is that she has already said that a decision which the the Indian courts have done, and if she is not ready to accept that means she don't believe in the judicial system. So if she don't believe in our judicial system, maybe you may have to rewind this whatever discussion we had in the last few minutes. You will be able to get to know what you said actually.
Let me clarify that. I think she said that no central organization or court seem to have a free hand. I think that was the exact quote.
She said so, including the judiciary has been in a way sold out. So the idea is that I think when you speak as an authority, you should be very, very careful with your words. And I believe that as a Indian, I believe in our judicial system, and we have been one of the finest judicial system in the world. And it is not just only for in India, it's in the world.
Priyanshi,
one of the
that's
most
still not a response.
System. And one second.
We'll just come to that. So I think all of us agree that we believe in the judicial system. That is why we still believe in questioning all of what is happening.
So if you could... Why, if they feel, forget about the Congress. If they feel that there is an issue with a particular BJP leader, they are saying that why the BJP leader, the only complaint the Congress is that, yeah, मेरा 5 लोगों को arrest कर रहा है, आपका तो एक भी नहीं arrest नहीं हो रहा. Then why don't you go to the courts and say that, yeah, these people have done this corruption, this is the real charges, and there is no action, whether ED or a CBI for that matter, any other agencies are not doing. Have you seen single complaint other than
what's to say that the charges against,
television?
I'm sorry, I'm just interrupting you there. What's to say that the charges against the BJP leaders are not real charges until they're proven? Why doesn't the same logic apply there?
Absolutely, it's the same applicable here as well. I'm not saying that, but the only problem is then the due process of the law is happening when the whether it is to Sonia Gandhi or Rahul Gandhi is being called for a interrogation, there is a huge hue and cry. It was not the same case when the P. Chidambaram was arrested. P. Chidambaram was arrested, their own leader, or a handful of 5 or 6 people were there in Johor Bahru. There was no hue and cry. There was no big Rasta Roko Abhiyan of Congress in Delhi. So the idea is that it's all about the Congress people, leaders today have become a slave of a family, and they cannot think beyond that particular family, and anything which is related to that family question, they become violent. They will come with all sorts of arguments. But I can only say, I sympathize at times for the Congress men who had to come and defend these people on national television. Why don't you understand the very fact of a case which were in not-for-profit company, there is no transactions have happened. If there is no transactions happened, why are you crying? Don't cry, just relax. There is an investigation is happening. There are courts in this country. They will not do anything wrong to you. But
right, let's get a response on that from Aishwarya Mahadev. I think PKD Nambiar's point remains throughout the discussion is that the due process is being followed, the due procedure and the legal course is being followed. So what's the Congress's problem in just cooperating with the questioning?
You know, Mr. Nambiar really did not answer majority point of what I said, but that's okay. It's fine. They're confounding and confusing when they obviously don't understand the facts of the case. The first fact is when it came down to this entire Dotex or AJL or Young Indian, the entire transaction, the entire history, all the accounts, all the papers, every single thing has been submitted. And this is a protracted sort of questioning and a prolonged battle in which they want to use this as a manner to oppress the opposition. And that is one single fact. Second thing is, sir, you may talk about, oh, why don't they go do it to the BJP? You know how many PILs have been filed against Himanta Biswa Sarma, including when he was in the Congress by the BJP themselves? What did you do? Did he become cleaner than the Ganga once you took him? Though the actual state of the Ganga is quite pitiable. The fact of the matter remains today. And you know, this whole commentary about the judiciary and whatnot, sir, people who could not in court give Mr. Stan Swamy a straw for weeks, and poor man, we understood what happened to him, are the people that call for emergency hearings when toppling of governments have to happen. If you believe today that the judiciary does not work under coercion or under pressure, then you are wrong. Every single institution today is working under the coercion of the BJP, and that is the reality. If you want me to give you a summary of it, besides the rhetoric that you will give me, I will tell you 10 or 15 instances of where this has happened, going back from 2014 onwards. And lastly, if the BJP actually had any sort of actual evidence of wrongdoing against the Congress, do you really believe that they would have kept quiet? Do you really believe that they would have not done this years ago when the case was actually active in 2012, 13, 14? This is protracted because they have no other agenda. They are extending it because they obviously want to mount a witch hunt and they want to try and oppress us. Because if the BJP had even one inkling of wrongdoing, they would have obviously taken action then.
Right.
Why did they not then? Why is this protracted decade-long battle?
Right, Mr. PKD Nambiar, you heard Aishwarya Mahadev. She says, if you had clear evidence, why didn't it come years ago? And why is it taking so many years to finally be proven, if at all? And also the second question that's always used as an argument in such cases is that what happens to these cases after the leaders shift from the Congress to the BJP? Like what happened with Himanta Biswa Sarma. After he shifted from the Congress when he faced multiple PILs, then he shifted to the BJP. So what really happened to the cases against him?
First part is that you were talking about why the BJP did not act for so many years and why suddenly all these things happening. First and foremost, this case was not filed by a BJP person. It was a case which was already pending during the UPA 2 time onwards, the National Herald case. and there is a merit in the case. That is the reason multiple courts, whether in the lower court or in the high courts, have never, both Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi both are out for bail. So that alone, the courts have never been, if there is no prima facie, there is no evidence, the courts would have really given them a clean check and just told them that, okay, there is nothing to go further. When the courts have already told that there has to be an inquiry, the inquiry is on. Whether the ED is doing right or wrong, that ED will be reporting to the high court or whichever the court requires. Why this hue and cry? That is the only question. I think let there be an inquiry, whether there is a raid or anything which is taking place, let it happen. We are talking about Young India, AGL and everything. Do you know the very fact? It is not just, how can it be a party give 100 crores to somebody? One. Secondly, how that can be only 76 or an 80% of the total share of that company goes to two people in the one particular family. Why it is not in the Aishwarya Mahadev's name? Why not in somebody else's name? But 76% goes to one particular family. Why? Another thing, is it more than 5,000 of the shareholders, which is other than this, but a part of the AGL? Why have they been given taken the consent from those people? No. Where is this complaint first had come? It has come from those shareholders first. Secondly, then there is a huge argument. It is a not-for-profit company. Come on, just be little sensible. Maybe every public may not be knowing it. It is a not-for-profit company does not mean that you will not be able to enjoy the fruit of the assets what you have.
PKD Nambiar, the process is being followed, as you say, in this case. But just the question of what happens to these processes when the leaders who face complaints shift from the Congress or any other party to the BJP. What happens to these due processes that should be taking place even then?
This is precisely I wanted to tell. Now, this is what I was answering even earlier. If Congress or for that matter an opposition party feels that जैसे ही वो बीजेपी में आ जाएगा तो उसका तो रंग बदल जाता है, he will become a clean guy. This is the standard argument of all the opposition parties. I am saying that any cases in similar, why don't you go to the courts? I have not seen a single complaint going to a judiciary, not just in just a vague PIL, go straight away. And if you are not getting there, then we will discuss. I think it's just don't give a blanket argument or just a questioning that anybody whomsoever become a part of a BJP, they will be given a clean sheet. I don't think is there anybody who had been given a clean sheet. Let me ask you this.
Right. I'm afraid we'll have to wrap up this discussion at this and leave it at that. Thanks very much, both of you, for joining us. And I think the argument is clear. On the BJP side, they say that it's the due process, the due law that we're following. And if the Congress does not have anything to hide, then what do they have against these questioning and against these raids? On the other side, the Congress, of course, calls it targeting of the opposition, saying that Congress leaders and opposition leaders are targeted without strong evidence existing against them, and they also question what happens to the cases against BJP leaders and also leaders who shift from the Congress to the BJP.